You're listening to Permission To, the podcast where we dive into the science and soul of owning your worthiness as a perfectly imperfect human being. I'm your host, Sam Dew, psychotherapist, positive psychology coach, mama to a beautiful 5-year-old Amelie, and passionate advocate for living an inspired life. My aim is to show you that you have full permission to own your worthiness so that you can embrace your true nature and begin walking boldly toward your dreams. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome to another episode of Permission To, and welcome to 2023. I am releasing a couple of episodes this week because I've had a big break and it's been beautiful, but I've just had so many ideas bubbling away and things that I wanted to share with you. So just a little, life update. We're almost on week 6 of school holidays here in Australia for my big girl. And so I've pretty much had the last 4 to 5 weeks off in my business. I, have still been working a little bit behind the scenes, creating some content and things like that. But I've had a full break from working with my coaching clients, and Permission Granted is on break at the moment as well. So it's been really beautiful. Swimming lessons down at the river with my big girl, glamping trips. We celebrated my 40th birthday. We went to Rottnest Island for 3 days. I feel like very grateful. Summer where I live is just paradise, so I don't really ever feel like I want to go away too much at this time of the year. But a few little mini breaks have been really nice, and I've had my husband Nick home as well. So it's just felt like a really, really beautiful reset. And so I guess I want to share this because I want to normalize having a slow start to the year. I feel like there's sometimes this sense of panic. It's excitement and also panic of I've got to get off on the right foot. And if you haven't chosen your word and planned out your year and set your intentions and your goals and done your vision board and everything, by, first couple of weeks of January, then you're somehow behind. And I just want to remind you that you get to choose how you show up every month of the year. January isn't the only chance for new beginnings, and to just say, hey, I haven't really planned or set intentions or done any of that stuff yet for this year because I've just been really present with my girls and trying to soak up the joy of summer holidays. Any mama would tell you that also comes with challenges, and there have been moments where I felt like pulling my hair out and really wanted space and really wanted more space to work on my business. But because Nick had those 3 weeks off, it's mostly been really lovely. So permission to take your time and choose how you want to start the year off that feels aligned to you as well, because you don't have to, if you want to have a gentle, nourishing year that's kind to your nervous system, then who says that means that you have to rush to, start working on your goals or to start making your plans? What if you allow yourself space for that? So anyway, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but I will say that over and over again because I think many of us need to hear it. But this episode is a little bit of a save and listen to it when you need it. So that's my intention with this episode. If you're feeling a little bit wobbly about 2023, if that's right now, or let's say you get to the middle of the year and you feel a bit wobbly, I want this to be an episode that you can come back to. And it's going to help you remember how powerful you are. It's part storytelling, part pep talk, and part tools and questions to help you remember how powerful you truly are. So bear with me. If you're not interested in hearing parts of my story, then you might want to kind of fast forward to the end. But I think the storytelling is really important because it's going to help you access the tools that you need as well. So I am going to touch a little bit on Frankie's birth story. If anyone is interested in hearing her full birth story, you can listen to one of my most popular episodes, Permission to Trust Yourself. But if you're not super interested in birth and birth stories, and there's only going to be a small amount touching on that, and I'm also going to be touching on my beautiful Nana's story. This episode came to me when I was relaxing and had like almost fallen asleep in the middle of a massage, and I think the music must have brought me back to Frankie's birth, because I had like a pretty epic playlist for her birth, and a lot of the music was like like very spiritual, very relaxing, probably maybe similar to what they would play it in some massage studios. Anyway, for whatever reason, earlier this year, I was thinking back to Frankie's birth because I had been feeling a little bit wobbly about a few things in my business this year. And I think that's such a human thing, even when we look up to business owners and we think they've got incredible businesses, it doesn't mean that they don't have moments where they feel a bit vulnerable or wobbly or insecure. And so, I have those moments too. And I remembered this moment in Frankie's birth. So her birth was a beautiful water birth at home. It was pretty straightforward. And most of the labor, it wasn't necessarily easy. Like, there was still a fair amount of pain, but it was pretty manageable. But when it came to the pushing part, this is the part that I remembered, right? So I was finding it really, really painful, and just feeling really overwhelmed. And I just felt like something wasn't quite right when I was trying, just something wasn't quite right. And I remember looking at the midwife, because I had two midwives for the final bit of her birth. And the second midwife, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I think this baby's going to be born sunny side up." And she had like a little bit of, this was my interpretation, a little bit of concern on her face, or a little bit of like, "Oh, you poor thing." That's what I saw on her face anyway. And I said to her, "Oh, does that mean like it's harder?" And she was like, yeah, it can be. And I guess, in a nutshell, when you have a posterior bub, it is harder. The pushing stage is harder because you're not having their head kind of help you push down. Their faces actually, the part that's kind of pushing down. And so that's a very non-scientific way of explaining my understanding of what was happening. Anyway, it was really painful, and I went to that part. I know that everyone will have been there, whether it's in birth or other parts of life, where I was like, I can't do this. I want someone to save me. Like, I want to go to hospital. I was thinking, I should just ask them to take me to hospital. Like, maybe we need to call an ambulance, or we just get in the car and go. Like, and the thought crossed my mind that like, no, I can't do this, right? And then my brain went, hang on, Sam, like, you really wanted a home birth. You are like 99% of the way. And basically, like, the only way out of this is through, like, there's it's basically too late now anyway to get any pain relief or to do anything other than push this baby out. And I think actually that realization was really powerful. And obviously I pushed, and it was pretty painful. But I did it, and she came out, and the rest is history, so to speak. Like, it was so worth it, and I'm so glad that I navigated that part of labour in that way. And the reason that I thought this was relevant is because when I was remembering that, I thought, oh my God, Sam, like, you forget how powerful you are. Like, you navigated that, like, that was all you. Like, there was no one there to rescue that. You had I had lots of support. I had a beautiful doula. My mum was there looking after my big girl, and my husband was there. Like, I had, and my midwives, like, I had so much support. but no one could actually do that part for me. I had to do it for myself. And so what I realized is remembering parts of that, like that's what I would call like a core memory. Like it's always going to be in my body. It's always going to be in my heart and my mind. And that snapshot of Frankie's birth story can really give me a sense of power and a sense of confidence when I feel wobbly. Like, hey, if you can do that, you can do anything. And so the first part of this is if you are feeling a little bit wobbly, a little bit vulnerable, a little bit worried about how something's going to go in your life or your business, I want you to, you can get out a pen and paper if you want to write this down or just remember it and answer it later. I want you to think back to a time when you felt incredibly powerful and remember it. So it doesn't have to be a birth story. A lot of the women that I work with in Permission Granted, one-on-one coaching, mentorship, they're not mamas, so they might be dog mamas and aunties, mamas in their own way, but doesn't necessarily mean that they've had a given birth. But there are so many other experiences that can make you remember how powerful you are. Like maybe it was that trek, in Nepal, or I don't know, wherever you went trekking where you felt like you were going to give up. I've had that experience too, actually, of trekking and feeling like I was going to give up, but there's no one to save you. You've got to keep going to get to your next spot. Maybe it was a trek. Maybe it was like something that you had absolutely no say in, something that was really, really hard in your life that you just had to get through. Maybe it was going through IVF, going through that journey, or someone in your family, navigating health issues, or you navigating health issues, or I don't know something will come to you and will land and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's right. And if you have trouble remembering, like sometimes music does help. But usually, when we think about a story that reminds us of how powerful we are, there is usually challenge involved in it. It's not usually the moments where life was really easy and wonderful where we necessarily remember how powerful we are. It was the moments when we had to rise up and step up. So yeah, permission to remember how powerful you are by using storytelling. And this is something that I think Jessie mentioned this in our last episode when I interviewed her about her experience in Permission Granted, that she was so surprised by how much of Permission Granted was also about gently reminding her of her strengths. Like there's like a real focus on finding the strengths within. That's not about pretending to be strong or hiding your vulnerabilities. That's about actually acknowledging like the positive qualities, the magic within you, the strengths within you that have helped you, move through your life and get through your life, through the hard times and the beautiful times. So that's the first part of this episode. Simple, I know, but easy to forget. Like I hadn't thought about Frankie's birth and that particular moment in so long. And then it was just having that massage and listening to that music that brought me back there. So yeah, permission to think about like a really, really powerful story that you can kind of anchor into whenever things feel a bit wobbly for you. And then, see, I know you're not meant to think when you have massage, but obviously my mind can wander sometimes. I think this was the facial part of the treatment. I started to think about my Nana and my Nana's story. And I think thinking about your ancestors and what they have been through and how powerful they are as well. I think that is also really, really important. And I do want to give a little bit of a trigger warning here in that I guess for some people thinking about your ancestors and what they have been through it could touch on trauma. And so, if this part of the episode doesn't feel right for you, or if this exercise doesn't feel right for you, please feel free to leave it. Like trust yourself, be discerning about what feels right for you. and come back to the next episode. But if it does feel good for you to think about your ancestors and their challenges and their strengths, then I invite you to think about that. And I wanted to share a little bit about my Nana's story, which feels really special to share with you. So my Nana was born in Ireland, in County Cork, and she had 6 children and lived on a farm with my pop, who I never met. Sadly, he passed away when my mum was quite young. But yeah, so she was raising 6 children during the potato famine in Ireland, and literally she and my pop had to catch a boat from Ireland to Australia. Well, they chose to catch a boat from Ireland to Australia, not really knowing anybody, not knowing what it would be like to live in Australia, or, you know, what they would do or how they would live or how they would survive, but just knowing that if they stayed in Ireland that they weren't going to survive. And yeah, then they built this amazing life. My mum was the youngest and was actually the only one born in Australia. And they farmed cattle. They moved to Denmark, Western Australia, which is like a very Irish part of Australia, I think, in terms of like, it was very green and lush and kind of cooler weather. So probably if you're going to find somewhere similar to Ireland in WA, that would be it. But I was just thinking about my Nana, and, you know, now that I'm a mum and I have more of an understanding of like what it's like to be responsible for children, just how brave it was to do that. To, you know, can you imagine in the time where there, you know, you couldn't just go and fly and visit your family and go back and forth so easily, that you had to go on a boat, you know, to totally leave your life behind in the country that you have known and loved your whole life and move to a new country. So when I think about my Nana, I also think about how, wow, I actually have strength that has been passed down through my ancestors from generation to generation. And I know, like, my Nana would want me to be brave and to do things that made me happy, but also took me out of my comfort zone. And so I kind of feel her energy as we're talking about this, and I think it's really special. So the second part of this is just simply asking yourself, like, about your ancestors, like what part of their story could also remind you of how powerful you are. Yeah, what strengths did they have? Maybe what strengths and what wisdom have they passed on to you that you have forgotten about? Because I hadn't thought about my Nana or her story in a while either. And both those stories really made me feel super powerful, super excited for this year, which is why I wanted to share it with you. So that is it. Such a simple but powerful episode. I would love to hear how you find story mining, like finding and remembering a story of your power and also of your ancestors and their power. There are no right or wrong ways to do this. It might be just thinking about your mum, or it might be thinking like generations and generations back. But yeah, I think that there's a lot more power within us than we that we sometimes forget, especially when we're feeling vulnerable. And also just a reminder that when you're listening to this, if you are feeling a bit wobbly, if you are feeling a bit insecure, or maybe that sense of like, oh, I'm not good enough for this thing that I want to create, or any of that's coming in, just a reminder as well that those thoughts and stories are not true, and you don't need to let them dictate what you do. So permission to also give yourself permission to feel wobbly and still take the action, because sometimes, especially if we've had a big break from work, or I know like a couple of mamas who are just coming back to work after having like a long stretch of mat leave, or maybe, you've been a student for a while and you're just working in your new career, or you're just starting out a business, like whatever it is. Sometimes when we're doing something and we've had a big break or it's new, we can feel a bit wobbly, we can feel a bit uncertain. or a sense of like, oh, am I going to be good enough at this? Those feelings and those thoughts don't actually mean anything about who you are or how you're going to succeed. So yeah, that's it. I am just so happy to be back in your ears for 2023. One of my goals this year is to make the podcast weekly. Last year with Frankie as a bub, I was really prioritizing her babyhood, and I just felt like I couldn't commit to a weekly episode. But now I am feeling like, yeah, it's much more realistic for me to do weekly episodes. I'd love to hear from you about how you found this episode, if you've got any ideas or topics that you'd like me to cover. And of course, I'd be so grateful if you could share any learnings from this episode and leave a 5-star review so that the more people that I can share this with, the better. See you next week for the next episode.